I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:09 p.m. Sustainability Committee. I'm going to call roll of the committee members. Adele Slaughter, present. Lily Barasha. Alexander Black.
Yes, here.
Chris Trent, on his way. Susan Schaubel.
Here.
Jesse Sanford's on his way at 7:30. Chip Meehan.
Here.
Melanie Winter, is she here yet?
Yep, here.
Yay, hi, Melanie. Diana Nicole.
Yep.
Tony Knight. Tony?
Here.
So, okay, we have a quorum. Great. The August minutes, do you want to talk to us about that, Chip?
Yes, Adele reached out and said, hey, can you shoot me those minutes? And I said, what minutes? So I need to go back and put the minutes together from the last meeting. I propose that we look at them next week or next month, and I am doing this month's notes as penance for not having brought the others, and I will get these to Jesse this evening. So
Do we need to have a motion to table it? Yes, we do.
yeah, I propose a motion that we table last month's meeting notes until next month.
And a second? Anybody?
Second.
Diana, second.
Thank you, Diana.
Call for a vote, and all in favor? Yes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Great. Okay, so that's passed. Yay. Announcements by government representatives or any guests. Do we have any announcements that people would like to make about sustainability issues? Diana?
Yeah, I attend the CFAC meetings regularly, and there is an ex-planner who has been tracking projects in the valley, and this month 14 projects at planning, 620 tree removals. That doesn't include protected trees. So again, just 14 projects, 620 trees will not be replaced. And Urban Forestry Division planted 129 trees. Point being is that we can't plant our way out of this.
There was an article in the Times today about the ideal forest structure, and they were talking about how that's changed over the time, just in the last couple decades. But one of the things they talked about, Diana, too, was that about the need for big old trees.
Unfortunately, the 10% of trees that the city manages, they're downsizing the urban forest is the term that's used for that. So they're taking out the big stuff, big old trees, planting the small stuff. The other thing is, for those that haven't heard this before, there is a study that Carly Zeider did. Her university is escaping me right now, but that we need over 40% tree canopy to mitigate the effects of warming by 5 degrees or 10 degrees. And there are cities all over the nation right now that are doing 40% plus, some of them as high as 60%. City of LA is going in the opposite direction, however.
So we should put this on as an agenda item, and maybe the brain power on this committee could come up with what kinds of solutions, what kinds of things can we do and support. but it's not on the agenda, so we can't really have a discussion about it tonight, but we have other things that are touch on this on the agenda tonight, so it will come back to that discussion. And thanks for that.
I
bit of
just wanted to
information.
give some context.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the bit of information. Any other announcements or guests that would like to speak? Government representatives? I don't think we get any of those. Public comment within the committee's jurisdiction on items not on the agenda. I do want to recognize Richard Niederberg because he had a public comment that he'd like to make.
Yes, I would like the Sustainability Committee to go back to looking after some of the wildlife in the area, particularly with they come to mountain lions in the southernmost portion of Studio City. There are some there, and yes, they get a few possums, but hey, that's life. A few years ago, the Sustainability Committee we had a deal with the National Wildlife, and we had an event, primarily educational, dealing with P22. It was held at Tree People. And I think this kind of event is good. We have to somehow get people to stop trying to poison the rats because it goes upstream and hurts the mountain lions, and it hurts a few owls along the way and other animals. Therefore, I would like to have some of the focus of sustainability is sustaining the wildlife and not just the plants.
Thank you. I think that's a great suggestion. Love it. We did talk a little bit about the wildlife ordinance and support of that. So we are aware of the need about animals, but Chris, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just one quick thing on that. P22 Day is actually happening on October 22nd in Griffith Park. So for people who want to know more about that and see some information and stuff about P22, that's happening on October 22nd from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Griffith Park.
Of course, P22 is just one of the mountain lions. Studio City has their own.
They do. There's at least one untagged female that's in the area that I know of. Beyond that, I'm not sure, but there's at least one other one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we should be supportive of the mountain lions in the area. I think it's good for us. It's definitely good for the environment. And now they're dealing with having next to few houses setbacks and passing by the houses so animals can walk past there. I'm all in favor of that idea. Things like the bridge over the freeway, that's not within the city of LA, much less within Studio City. So we can't do much about that except encourage it, but we can have people to stop poisoning the rats, which then goes upstream in the chain. I would like to do some sort of event that recognizes the mountain lions in our area. Thank you.
Chip?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time for this, but where are we with regards the website being updated? So I know there's a great deal of information out there about rodenticide, how it gets into the food chain, and there's a lot of people that have done a lot of work on this. Are we to a place, or are we getting to a place where we could actually have a bit of an email blast that went out telling people to not use rodenticides, and then actually link to existing expert documentation that's out there?
Mm-hmm. Brandon, do you know about that?
We could do it right now. I just have to go onto the pages, the committee pages, and move some information, because right now where the names are, that's actually the section where you can put in articles and links. So I have to move the names to another section. Once that's done and that section's wide open, each committee page can have their own username and password. That you put in the username and password, it only goes to the committee page and nowhere else. Looks like you don't have access to say the home page or the news page or the calendar page. That I could take care of that this week and have that ready for you. That's not a problem. I've just been very busy as of the past 3 or 4 weeks, but my schedule's opening up now and I can get that done.
So would one person on the committee, let me just get the logistics. Would one person on the committee be able to change and add links and stuff? Is that how it works?
Yeah, but what I would like to do is get all the pages set up, find out who on the committee, say you or Chip or whoever, might like to admin your particular page. And then you just have to be careful that you're not being an activist. You're more of an advocate, that you're not maybe pushing something that the board has not had a chance to vote on yet. Other than that, as long as it's all pure information like what you're talking about right now, I don't see a problem. And Scott's email blast can have a link specifically directly to the Sustainability Committee page.
That being the case, Adele, how about if all of us, because clearly Diana has a bunch in the top of her head that we could link to right now that would have some information. So perhaps for next month, or certainly not this week, why don't we all put together a couple different links? Because I don't know, Chris, where did you know about P22 Day? Do you follow P22?
Yeah, that's been going on for a long time, actually, for many years, and it's an event they have every year. And there's various websites that can be linked in with that. And I also, too, I think a few months ago, I had sent out an image of a bobcat that I had run into that had, advanced stages of mange from more than likely rodenticide. I can certainly supply photos of that guy. He was outside of Studio City, but close by, and it's a problem everywhere. So I have actual firsthand photos of the effects of that.
Great.
Adele, do you just want us to get like a list of people we would like to link to? I'm sorry, Alexander, I stepped on you.
I think it's.
That's okay. I'll just wait.
I think it's, well, I've got Susan and then Alexander and then Melanie. I think that what we can do is as a committee, we can work sort of offline and figure out what things, I mean, we all have our pet projects, we've got mountain lions, we've got trees, we've got synthetic turf, so there's a lot of things that we want to link to and provide information with. And then like Tony is planting trees in the neighborhood, and like maybe he wants to do something with that. Like, so everyone's doing stuff and it would be great. And then Susan has something. What would you like to say?
Oh, having stuff on the website is great, but I was also thinking, I was on a hiking trail about a week or two ago, and on the entrance, they had a great sign that was, don't use rodenticide, keep our wildlife free and wild. And I think it'd be great if we could somehow post these very nice little signs or info things near some wildlife areas, because not everybody's going to go look at a website, and I thought it was a nice message.
Could you take a picture of that sign when you're there next?
Yes, I will. I thought of that after I left. I said, oh, I should have taken a picture.
Because we could do signs on, Fryman,
Right.
on, I can think of a few other places.
Yeah, well, this was sort of in the Palisades area, and it's interesting because I was a few months before that, I spoke with someone who said, well, we just have to use pesticides because there's so many rats around. And I went into a long discussion with her, but people just don't get it.
Adele?
Yeah.
It's Alexander here. Yeah, guys, just so we're not reinventing the wheel and look at the work that's being done. And particularly there seems to be a wealth of information and possibly financial support at SaveLACougars.org. What work they're doing with Annenberg and with the big bridge going up in the West Valley, to look at these partners, these other stakeholders, these other folks who are possibly ahead of this, and what, I can take the role on and just checking in with some of those folks. What are they doing? They could have the money and even the agenda that we're hoping we could have to do this type of thing already in the works. So the question is, who else is out there that from the valley to Fryman Canyon to over where I spent a lot of time up on Coanga Pass, where P22 is, just to have, yes, a sense of what's coming, what's being done, especially in the rodenticide area of signage and education, because that's a huge part of it, of course. So,
Great.
right.
Will you take the lead on finding out, getting us a list of other places that are doing it, like Claw also? And all
Yeah,
those-
yeah, Tony, Tony
Yeah.
Tucci,
Yeah.
Claw, Save LA Cougar.org, and the Annenberg folks. What they're doing is important for all of us. The other thing is, if you notice, if you go to Petco, Whole Foods, the big box Studio City area stores, you'll see a black box around the outside of that building, and depending on their contract with the company they work with, that could have some really terrible. They're supposed to be outlawed, and they're supposed to be spending more money on trapping instead of rodenticides. I don't know, but calling out particularly companies like Petco. Oh my God, think about that. I mean, here we have a company that's involved with pets and animals, and they're sitting there with these poison boxes around the building. So next time you're in the parking lots, Ralph's, Petco, any of these stores, Bed Bath Beyond, all of these stores, any large retailer, look around and see what they have at the bottom edge of their buildings where the rats are, and maybe call them out, or at least talk to the manager and say, hey, do you know this? What's there? Who's handling that? And who the contractor is that has that job of setting
Okay.
that.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from Melanie.
Adele, point of order. Really
Yeah.
quick. This
Yeah.
is coming close to an unagendized
Yeah, sorry.
agenda topic. So you guys are talking about roticide, but it's not on the agenda. This is really more for public comments. Though it's great. It's great conversation. It's not on the agenda, and it's going on way too long. I just have to be the bad guy because Scott's not here.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to let Melanie speak.
Thanks. I'll just say that I saw a similar sign this morning, a block west of Coldwater on Ventura, where the Oak median begins. And I didn't get up close, but it, maybe copying that would be great. And I would also suggest, again, reaching out to the bid and seeing if they would partner with us to send a message to businesses along the bid, at least, who use these little black boxes with poison in it around their businesses to, help us reach out in an information campaign to them.
And we can further agendize this in another meeting and talk about an event, what Richard had requested. Okay, moving on. Are there any other public comments within the committee's jurisdiction, items not on the agenda? Not hearing any. I move on to number 5.
I got something.
Oh, who's that?
Brandon.
Oh,
This was actually on an agenda at Sherman Oaks a while back. I don't know if you want it on the agenda because it'll probably attract a certain individual, but it's something that's been around a while. Using goats to clear brush, like chaparral and stuff like that. It's been around a while. There's actually a couple of companies out here in LA that do that, but it was actually on a Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council agenda, I think a couple of months ago. And I don't know how relevant that would be for Studio City, but goats clearing brush might be something to talk about. Again, it might bring a certain individual that likes patrolling the neighborhood council once in a while.
I just want to chime in.
I just wanted to bring that up.
And Adele, I seem to chime in that because I did a lot of research on it. The minimums are ridiculous. They want 200 goats and something like 50 or at least 10 acres. Just so everybody knows, it isn't just a couple of goats wherever you want them. There's a tremendous amount of logistics involved, and the minimums have gotten pretty high. There's just a couple outfits doing it, and they're not just jumping in for small jobs. They want large areas, and I think it's a minimum of 200 goats.
I
Just
will
FYI.
also jump in. There is a council file there are two council files on this actually, and I'm aware of it because I've been working on it for a couple of years with the Sapulbita Basin Wildlife Area Steering Committee, because we have large areas and we've been trying to get the city to allow us to work with goats, as they have been used in a number of other large conservation areas very successfully. And other cities are using them. And one of the council files, and we could look it up and agendize it for next time, is asking that rather than rely on private companies, that we begin to look at ways to partner with Conservation Corps and others to start to incorporate the use of goats in management of, our habitat areas and such like that. So if we could discuss it in another meeting, but we do have two council files. Adele, you'll remind me, I'll send you the particular council files that we can weigh in on.
Okay,
if you like. Just for CIS purposes, make it simple.
perfect. Thank you so much, Melanie.
It sounds like a WKRP stunt. Let's give away baby goats for Christmas. What could go wrong?
Jesse, would you note that Jesse arrived to the meeting? Chip?
Yes.
Great. Okay, now we are on.
You
the
might end
agenda.
up with a few more mountain lions in the area too.
Discussion and possible motion, City Council File 20-1374, 30 by 30 conservation campaign, open space conservation. I did a link to the motion. I hope you all went and read it. I wanted to discuss the efficacy of sending a CIS to the council file, even though the council file is almost up in terms of time. It is a very well-written council file. I think that, oh God, what's his name? The guy who got it voted out by Raman, David Rue did. And I was wondering if we should also send it around to different people in the forestry division and Krikorian and Raman and the director of planning. In October of 2020, Governor Newsom signed his Nature-Based Solutions Executive Order N82-20, elevating the role of natural and working lands in the fight against climate change and the advancing biodiversity conservation as an administrative priority. As part of this executive order, California committed to the goal of conserving 30% of our lands and coastal waters by 2030. And then I did a link to the 30-30 campaign in California. And one of the things I wanted to ask about this, if you go look at that website, you'll see that it's a lot about, saving these beautiful vistas, the sides of the ocean, they're just like gorgeous places, I'm like stunningly beautiful in California. But here in Studio City, we have a little bit of a different, landscape. And, one of the things that I thought maybe we could propose that Weddington Golf and Tennis be a piece of land, that 16 acres of open green space that ought to be preserved in the 30 by 30. And maybe we could add in, much of the Santa Monica Mountains, where I know Alexander knows a guy who has 22 acres that he wants to develop, and he keeps trying to develop it. And that land, it's on the crest of the hill. Alexander can tell you about that. And, there's lots of pockets of land in our urban world that ought to be preserved as part of that 30 by 30. And so I just sort of wanted to have a discussion about that in terms of Studio City and how we could contribute to preserving open green space to help us not have the planet burn up. And so that was one of the reasons why. And then Diana has been going to the meetings about the 30 by 30, and she can explain it more to you. But I do want to say one thing she told me, which I thought was very impressive, is at a meeting, one of the speakers was saying, we need, we've got 8 years, and Governor Newsom stopped him and said, no, we have 7.5 years, because we've already got half a year we've gone through to get to this goal. And the way that development, you know, and the way that developers are being allowed to take down trees and get rid of green space is, you know, pretty scary. Case in point is that Sunkist building over on Riverside Drive across from the Trader Joe's and across from the Fashion Square Mall. They had a beautiful tree canopy and it was street trees and they took them all down. I mean, like 50 of them. And as far as I know, the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council signed off on that. And I think that the tide is turning, I hope. And I think, so I just would like to open up the discussion and see what we come up with. I don't, just as another note, I really don't want to write motions in the committee. I'd rather, you know, assign people to write, you know, if we discuss it and we all agree, assign some people to write it and then get it to the committee. I don't want to spend our time. I'd rather spend our time having an intellectual discussion, whether we all agree or disagree. It does not matter to me one little bit. I want to hear what everyone thinks, but I don't want to spend time writing the motion in committee because it's not productive for me.
So can I chime in?
Yeah.
So first of all, well, I'm going to ask this question and then ask it, or say that, first of all, you have to have a willing seller to participate in with nominating land for 30 by 30. It's really designed for organizations like land trusts. But I guess the question I have for the committee is, I don't know how familiar or unfamiliar everyone is with 30 by 30. A lot of people I speak to never heard of it before. So I don't know if show your hands or is I know you sent a lot of links, Adele, with the agenda, but I know a lot of people don't have time. So does everybody know what 30 by 30 is? Does anybody?
Yep, I've been working on the campaign, the statewide campaign for over a year.
Okay, I figured you did, Melanie. What about the rest?
Jesse's nodding his head yes. Chris sort of knows. Tony knows a little bit.
I know a little bit, but I would love to hear more. Thank you.
Well, okay. I mean, the city of LA passed a resolution in support of 30 by 30, which is Governor Newsom's nature-based solutions executive order. And that's what they call it, nature-based solutions executive order, which was committing this California to conserve 30% of lands and coastal waters by 2030. And I guess, you know, so why are we wanting to preserve 30% of our lands in the first place? Well, it's because we're in a biodiversity extinction and climate crisis. And those two are the same side of the coin. They're connected. And it's wonderful that we have folks in Sacramento that recognize that. And so there were leading conservation scientists that came out a long time ago and said, we have to conserve 50% of Earth. It's actually came out in a book. There's all kinds of organizations behind this. It's called Half Earth. And we have to do this by 2050. California determined, and leading biodiversity and climate scientists have determined that we have to get to 50 by 50 or half Earth, we have to conserve 30% of nature. I use nature and biodiversity interchangeably because they are the same thing, by 2030. Otherwise, we're sunk with half Earth. And to meet that goal, Governor Newsom put out his initiative, which is to meet that by 2030. What that means is that we have 7.5 years, like Adele said, and I was at the kickoff meeting where Newsom corrected somebody who said we have 8 years. He said, no, we have 7.5 years to protect 6 million acres of nature. So we have to protect nature, we have to restore biodiversity, and the question is, how do we do that locally? The city council came up with a resolution in support of 30 by 30, but it doesn't really commit us to anything. It's just saying, hey, we support this, right? There's no teeth in it. There's nothing there. So I did a search, and there is a council file, council file 20-1375, could maybe accomplish something, at least from the city, because it seeks to commit the city to conserving 30% of the city's land for open space and conservation by 2030, which the resolution doesn't do. But it's been sitting in limbo for 2 years. It was also presented by Councilmember Rue, so that might be one of the reasons. I believe it was seconded by Koretz, and I can't remember the third. Bloomingfield was the other council member on that. So I guess what I'm wondering for this discussion, and by the way, it's saying we have that the city is going to commit to protecting 30% of nature, and that we needed a report back from planning and rec and parks, because how can we do this if planning isn't involved in some way? You know, I always ask the question, given that 90% of nature is in and around our private spaces, private open space, our yards, and as we have SB9, how do we protect our nature, our urban forest with SB9? So it's a planning issue. And I think that that's what this council file seeks to do. So the question is, how do we revise it? How do we get it out of just sitting there in limbo? It's literally 2 years this month that it hasn't gone anywhere. So I'm posing that question for discussion.
So I
here.
have Chris Trent has his hand raised.
I have a question. How do we define the term protect? If it's protected, what does that mean?
It means conservation. It means that we take it off the table from development.
Melanie, you've been working on this for a year, you say. Do you want to weigh in at all?
The state 30 by 30, yeah. I'm just, I mean, what are you asking for? That we should submit a CIS trying to move along the things that have not received report backs? Is that what's being proposed here?
The council file hasn't had any action on it in 2 years. I don't know if submitting a CIS is the answer. So I'm asking the question, and maybe none of us know, and we're going to have to find out. How do we revise a dead council file? It doesn't appear to have been closed, but it's dormant.
Right, it looks like it had been sent on to council.
There's no votes.
Right, so it didn't go to council ever. I mean, I'll note that probably nothing is going to get through council for a little while here, but yeah, no. But we could write a CIS, but also reach out to the council office and inquire about the status or any intel on this, or the remaining author. That might be, you know, just communicating with the council office to get a feel for that. The other thing is, I mean, I brought this in terms of the planning department. I brought this to planning department with respect to the Southeast Valley Community Plan, and that this stuff needs to be embedded in our community plan, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another way to try to make sure that this stuff hits the ground here in our community. But I think right now, if we want to talk about drafting a CIS, maybe based on some previously existing attached to the council file CISs, we could do that. But I think it would be smart to reach out to the members who are tied to this motion and see if we can get some response as to if what it takes to revive this, and then have our own neighborhood council make that part of their CIS to revive it. But I think it's silly not to communicate with the author, the remaining signatories to that, and our own council member as well.
Yeah, so Koretz is termed out. I don't know that. So then it's back to Blumenfield, but
Right,
also,
but it's not Paul, it's Andy. So reaching out to Andy, you know,
yeah, Melanie, we
Paul
can
doesn't
talk.
write these. So
Yeah,
reach out
I've
to
already-
Andy, see if he knows. If he doesn't, then reach out to our council, reach out
Yeah,
to
we've
Nithia's office.
already, yeah, I'm not going to get into a personal conversation with Schrader, but there's already indication there that that's not going to be a viable path. I do agree that we have to reach out, and I do think that maybe, you know, Nithya, it's her council district now, so maybe we need to see what Nithya can
Right,
do
so
about
yeah,
it.
reach out to the council office and see what we can do. That's all. I
Okay,
don't think it's worth spending a whole lot of time on beyond that right now.
it's a really good motion. We're not going to get anything at the city. If we don't do something with this existing council file, or maybe someone.
Yeah, let's reach out to the
writing in.
council office and we can, if we want to draft a CIS, great, but I don't want to take up a whole lot more time. Brandon has his hand up.
Brandon, yeah, Brandon, you have your hand up?
I would just like to say
I
something.
have the floor.
Okay, Brandon, I'd
I'm
like to say
cooking
something
dinner.
after Brandon.
I'm cooking dinner. Do an RFA, a request for action. You can do both. You can do a CIS and an RFA. CIS to the council file, a request for action to both Nithya Raman and Paul Krikorian regarding taking action on a dormant council file. You can do both in one motion. You can send both. I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. The CIS puts it on the record, it goes on the council file record. The RFA is a direct request to our neighborhood, to our council members to
Take action.
get this thing back on track. Thanks.
Yep, got it. Great.
What
that's
does
great.
RFA stand for?
Request for action.
Make sense? Do we have an example of what one looks like? Brandon?
He's cooking dinner. I'll get
Someone
it.
call my name?
Do you have an example of what a RFA looks like?
Yeah, we did two of them for the ad hoc meeting. The ad hoc meeting for the Code of Conduct and digital communication policy. Those are both RFAs because if there's not a council file, it's an RFA. If there's a council file, it's a CIS, community impact statement. If there's no council file to refer to, it's a request for action.
So
But if
there
there-
is a council file, so.
Right, but we can, because it's a dormant council file, we can do both a CIS and an RFA.
You can
and
do-
we
I don't
get
think
that
there'll be a
drafted
problem.
before the next meeting and move on now to the next agenda item.
Listen, I got to say something, Adele. We spent a lot of time talking about rodenticide that wasn't even on the agenda. I don't appreciate a committee member trying to cut off discussion. I think that's up to the chair. And I think it's quite disrespectful, and I'd appreciate it if that didn't happen again.
Thank you. I didn't think that I wasn't finished with the discussion unless everyone else, no one else has anything to say about about 30 by 30. Are they seeing no other hands raised?
Just for the notes, Adele, so then the action step is to do an RFA and a CIS to the remaining author, or I guess any part of the staff of the authors. And then we also want to give Nithya the mantle of leadership by asking her if she wants to take it.
Yep.
You want to try Paul as well? So I'll put down
Yes,
CD2 and
yes.
CD4.
I want to do Paul and.
Okay, so
Nithya.
we're going to check with the authors and then ask CD2 and 4 to take the lead.
Yeah.
And includes Blumenfield, and then the question is who's going to take that on?
Who's willing to sit down and work on the CIS and RFA.
It should be one of you guys that know.
Melanie and Diana, you guys want to hammer it out together?
I'll reach out to the council offices. I'd like to do that first before getting into writing something.
Cool.
Okay. Melanie,
What?
would you like to take part in reaching out to any of the council offices or?
I don't have bandwidth for that right now.
Okay. Do you want to write anything for it? Don't have bandwidth for that either. Does anybody else want to help do some writing or anything? No bandwidth?
Well, let me reach out first and then report back. Think about that.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? Okay, let's move on to item number 6. Discussion and possible motion of the zoo alternative 1.5. And I have all these links. The Department of Fish and Wildlife letter is incredibly comprehensive. The Friends of Griffith Park letter, then there's other shorter letters. And then I have a bunch of notes, which I'm not going to read. Hopefully you did read it, about things that the impacts that, even though Zoo Alternative 1.5, they did listen to some things, but they still are going to take down 16 acres of oak woodland. They're going to blast in the hill to create a condor exhibit. They're going to put up a climbing wall.
Restaurant.
A restaurant, yeah, 300 more parking spaces, I think additional, right, Melanie? The lighting is going to
Yes.
impact the, it's for a zoo. It's like, the irony is that this is a zoo that they're making into basically a kind of theme parky type thing. And look, I have lots of opinions about zoos that I don't want to share with you guys because I'm not a big zoo person, but the zoo could be made better than it is. And I don't know that this, I think these plans that the zoo people are coming up with has more to do with getting people in and having commerce than about the animals and about the environment and about conservation. I do want to say one of the alternate plans is all about conservation. So I've looked at this and been to a few of the different meetings, and I'm very aligned with what the Friends of Griffith Park, what they write and what they have said about it. And one of the most interesting things, alternate 1 is still the more environmentally friendly of all their plans, alternative number 1. And the Griffith Park guy did note that alternative 1.5 and alternative 1 bring the same amount of people to the zoo, and alternative 1 does not do as much damage to the environment. It does not take out the 16 acres and so forth. So anyway, I'd like to discuss this and see where people are. I'd like for everyone to kind of weigh in and just say, where you are in this, if you've read it, if you know about it. I'd like to go around and hear what everyone has to say. Do you mind if I start with you, Tony?
Let me go last.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got something else right here. Go ahead.
Okay, Chris.
Can you tell me just briefly what the Fish and Wildlife
It's
stance?
28 pages. I attached it to the agenda.
Yeah, I don't have time to read all that. So
Yeah,
there
so-
just a summary.
I helped write the LA Audubon letter, so I'm happy to try and give a summary of Fish and Wildlife, if you'd like, Adele.
Yep.
Okay, so I think, and I'm glad you asked the question, Chris, because they are the experts. They are the trustee agency.
Well,
So,
yeah, more on that later, but okay.
yeah, so we don't always have CDFW doing environmental, right, review, and it's good when we do. The general, so CDFW doesn't make a determination. They don't say whether this alternative or that alternative, and they didn't specifically comment on alternative 1.5. I did reach out to my contacts at CDFW, and they said that they gave me the piece of their letter that they feel does address 1.5. And they raise all kinds of concerns all day long in that 28-page document, although not all 28 pages is their review. They have a problem with the destruction of 16.5 acres because there are sensitive listed, meaning that's on the endangered list, species list. It is a chaparral oak woodland. And they say in their review that they have doubts as to how that would even be mitigated. And if it is to be mitigated, it is to be mitigated at 5-to-1 by area affected. So where are we going to put that so the city would have to buy whatever that is, 5 times 16.5 acres of similar habitat somewhere else in the city and maybe donate it to the Conservancy, but that has not been identified as even a mitigation under 1.5, because under 1.5, they don't recognize any of it as anything special, and they just recognize the protected tree ordinance. And arguably, the CDFW even says, we're not sure where you put all those mitigation trees at 4-to-1. So there's that. The CDFW letter also points out that the biological did not do a proper vegetation mapping under CEQA, which is under CDFW protocols. And so we shouldn't even be really talking about this because they haven't done the proper protocols under CEQA. And they go into a whole bunch of things like, oh gosh, you know, the 1.5 proposes that they're going to move these sensitive wildlife species that have been identified there. They're just going to translocate them like they're zoo animals. CDFW says that's kind of something you can't do successfully. They say wildlife will die. What
And
I don't,
can I just interrupt you specifically? The crotch bumblebee is detected there, and they're very concerned about them basically being killed.
and just for those, since Tony, maybe you're not familiar with this, 1.5 is going to be turned into event space, a big portion of that. And then another portion is going to be under 1.5 turned into another exhibit. I always get the name of the, it is a endangered species from South, like San Diego area. And then and I will just say I'm on the board of Los Angeles Audubon, and Los Angeles Audubon's opinion on the condor exhibit that they want to put up next to the climbing wall and everything. Our position is, first of all, it has nothing, you know, bird exhibits are nice, but it has nothing to do with conservation. They've been doing conservation of the condor corridor, the captive breeding and release for some 30 years in the back areas of the zoo just fine. And so we don't believe that it's appropriate it's a good reason to have that exhibit is a good reason to blow or blast 60 some odd feet into the side of the mountain, which, by the way, this is in a high fire zone as well. So there's that. I could go on with the concerns about this, but that just gives you a little bit. I read a lot of CDFW reviews, and a lot of it tends to be quite similar, because when we talk about oak woodlands or oak walnut woodlands, the concerns are always the same. They support the same kind of wildlife, but this had a lot of concerns, and I just couldn't read it coming away thinking that there was any way to mitigate this. And it sure felt like that's what CDFW was saying, is that this plan is it's not mitigatable. And I'll just want to say this last thing, because I see Melanie's got her hand up. You alluded to something, Adele, and what this is. And I worked for Disney for 20 years. And I worked on the Animal Kingdom project in Orlando. This is what we call the Disneyfication of nature. And there's a lot of money in events, billions of dollars. That's why Disney does it. And that's what they're trying to do here at the zoo.
Thank you, Diana. Melanie?
I guess my question is, this is the agenda item is discussion and possible motion,
Yep.
but there isn't a draft motion attached.
Yes,
Was
because
the intent that we would have a roundtable discussion and try to write a motion during this meeting? What is?
No, I'm sorry, you weren't here at the beginning. I want to have discussions, and then I want to have it go to other people to write the motion. I'm not going to write motions on Ed committee. It's just not doable.
So what are we voting on?
It's discussion and possible motion. I just want to I want to actually take the temperature and see if everyone agrees on that, because some people think that the zoo project is brilliant. And I just don't know if there's anyone who thinks that the zoo 1.5 is alternative plan is better, is it, or an improvement, or what we should approve of. I want to know, I want to take the temperature and then decide, and have a couple of people volunteer to write a motion.
Got it. So given that we've taken one stab at this already and been rebuffed by the prior neighborhood council, would be an attempt to do it again.
That's the other thing I want to discuss, but first I want to find out what people think about the zoo alternative 1.5, which is a new version, right? They had 1, and they had 2, and they had 3, and they had 4, and now they're proposing 1.5 as a solution to all of that. And I wanted to see what the temperature was in committee, and then we can see if we think it's wise to take it to the board.
Right. So the question would be, is there anybody here on this committee who feels that what the zoo has presented is awesome, or
A good idea.
yeah. So that would be the question.
So is it 1 or 1.5, Adele? Is that what we're taking?
Well, the zoo is presenting 1.5 right now. They think that they have listened to the community and they've responded, and this is the best they can come up with. And they think this is the superior version.
There are no other alternatives
Their hands.
on the table. Only 1.5 is on the table. There are other alternatives. You alluded to one, Adele, which is alternative 3, which would turn it into a world-class research and conservation center, but that's not on the table.
This is just 1.5. So that's all we're talking about right now. So let me recognize Chip.
Yeah, and that was my question, because all of the commentary is about 1.5. So we're just basically voting thumbs up or thumbs down on 1.5 at this point.
Correct.
So I would like to propose a motion that the Sustainability Committee vote thumb down on 1.5.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? Jesse?
I actually had two quick questions. The first being, I read through the 1.5 and they were saying they listened to community feedback. They're preserving 6 acres of some woodland, but what I've heard is that 16 acres are still being removed. Can someone explain what was saved, what was still being removed, number one? And number two, in the LA plan update, they say 1.5 is the environmentally superior alternative. So can someone explain why they're saying that? And if one is actually in practice more the superior option, but if someone can address those two things.
I can address part of it. They're saying, so they're
Adele,
saying
wait,
that
Adele, why don't you let me, because
I know you know more about it, but I want to talk right now. So they're saying that the 16 acres is degraded, that it doesn't, yes, that's what they said. That's what they told.
no,
CFAC.
that's what Catherine, that's what somebody else said. No, it's not
That's
true.
what they told to the people that they took on tour.
In
It is what they said.
It is what they said. It's
But
what
that's
they're,
not-
I'm
okay.
telling them what they're saying, because that's what we have to deal with. So they've told the people that the 16 acres is degraded and it's not worth saving. That is probably not a true statement. Actually, it's not a true statement. It is not a true statement, but that's what they're saying. Then I believe, and this is where Diana knows more, maybe Melanie knows, that the 6 acres that they want to save is part of the 16, but I'm not sure about that. That's maybe not true. So you can explain the 6 acres. Melanie, do you know about that?
Their justification for it is it's nothing, it's nothing that special, and there are some invasive species on that, and we're going to plant some, brand new trees over here anyhow and make it all better and make it pretty, and you'll get better. And so what we're doing is environmentally superior. That's the answer to the why are they saying it's the environmentally superior option.
So I look at it differently. And I've spent a lot of time with this. So when they say the environmentally superior option, that is compared to the original EIR, which would be to have destroyed the 6-acre oak woodland, which is separate from the 16.5 acre chaparral and oak woodland. So they had 2 exhibits. They refer to it as the Africa exhibit, and that's where the 6-acre oak woodland is. Actually, it's an oak walnut woodland. They cut down walnut trees to the stumps, but they didn't even recognize it as an oak walnut woodland because that would make it a sensitive natural community under CEQA, and they would have to mitigate that at 5-1. And then the other area is called the California area, and that's where the 16.5 acres is. There are a lot of people who have said, and the zoo has said, yeah, there's non-native trees in there, so it's not worth as much as that 6-acre oak walnut woodland. But they are separate, and the reason they're claiming it is superior because it saves the Africa area, which is the 6 acres of oaks woodland, and it develops the 16.5 acres versus what it was going to do, which was going to develop all 20, what is that, 23 acres, if you add it up.
Does that answer your question, Jesse?
Yeah, thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agreed with the statement that you said at the beginning of this, Adele, and sort of like there's a lot of research about zoos and how, they always start off by saying, well, if people don't see these things, then they won't learn how to preserve them worldwide. And there's been a lot of research that shows that that is false, that zoos and having connection with wildlife in zoos does not actually make people want to conserve wildlife in wild places any more than not going to a zoo. And so that argument is false. And so, in my personal opinion, the zoo should be downsized and most of those animals relocated to appropriate wildlife sanctuaries around the country or the world. But the idea of expanding it is really a horrible thing. And so I don't know anything that we can do like this. I know we can't get in on the ground floor and start redesigning the entire thing from our perspective here, of course. So the best thing to do would be, it seems like what other people are suggesting here, and joining the other organizations and opposing this 1.5, which is clearly not in the right direction, even if you want to keep the zoo, how it is. So I would be supportive of a motion that we would develop that would oppose this particular direction.
Chris?
A couple things. First of all, the whole zoo thing is an interesting discussion, and for some other time. What I will say is the work that the zoo, the LA Zoo, the San Diego Zoo, and a couple of other places have done with the Condor program has been absolutely amazing, and they wouldn't be here probably without that work. That's from a biology aspect. It's not a conservation aspect. The conservation aspect of the lands and the lead bullets being used by hunters and stuff, that is the critical issue that faces the condors in particular. So there are aspects of the zoo that have been very, very worthwhile, but other aspects, the part that relates to the public viewing, that kind of stuff is questionable, certainly. But to not take it away from the zoo, they have done an amazing amount of work with the Condor program. So there are aspects that are good. That being said, backing off to the other thing about mitigation, I think, Diana, as you stated in the beginning, there were 119 trees planted, but 600 taken out. I don't have any faith in anything that says in the future we will plant more trees. If you take one out here, we will plant 2 or 5 or 10 or 100 later. I think that's all fiction. And it's far more important, I think, to preserve what's there and not take out what's there, as opposed to making plans to put it in later, which is probably going to turn into vapor. And the point that you made about the 16 acres being taken out, that potentially the city or somebody else could buy 16 acres of land and preserve that. That doesn't fix the 16 acres that's going to be taken away. They would have to buy 16 acres of developed land and turn it back into a forest or something to mitigate the 16 acres that were being taken away. Just preserving 16 more acres that already was forest doesn't fix that. So in my world, it's far more important to do whatever it takes to not have things taken out. Any forests or trees, preserve what's there is number one. That's my view.
Brandon?
Yeah, I have a question about this, and some very intelligent people here who know far more about this than I do. During this discussion, I keep asking myself why. Why does this 1.5 exist? Why do they want to do this to the zoo? I'm hoping it's not because of the Olympics. I'm hoping that's not the only reason. Okay, I figured that way. You shouldn't have told me that. I was hoping against all hopes that it wasn't about the Olympics, but I figured it was. Does the why outweigh all of this? And from what I'm hearing, there doesn't appear to be a reason to do this other than tourism, other than the Olympics. If there was a reason, if it was dilapidated, if it was in a sorry state and it absolutely needed a brand new facelift and a few things, fine. If there was a wildlife way station there, some kind of rehab center, I'm sure there is. Condors maybe too. But if there was a why, a compelling reason to have this done, then I would say yes. But right now, aside from the Olympics, I don't see any reason why they should be doing this at all. It just sounds like a money-making opportunity and nothing more. Thank you.
Jesse and then Susan.
I was just going to say to Brandon's point, I mean, I read the thing and it said the current space for the elephants is like 3 acres. They're going to double it to 6. I mean, they're talking about more space for
The
not,
gorillas too.
not the pens. I don't know what you call it. More space for the exhibits. So that's
Enclosures.
Enclosures. Thank you. Like
You're welcome.
one potential positive. I mean, 3 acres for elephants, but at the cost of what? I'm not sure. And I don't know if it's worth it.
I just want to mention to Brandon's, I mean, I feel very similarly to Tony. I struggle to see animals in enclosures. Like I can't even go anymore. I mean, I literally start crying. So I cannot see that, but I do know that the gorilla exhibit is really bad and not a good thing. So part of the zoo expansion is about making a better enclosures for animals, I think. But I'm philosophically opposed to it. And so anyway.
Adele, can I chime in? It's Alexander.
No, because I've got
Oh.
3 people with their hands raised.
Sorry.
So
I'll
you
raise my
just
hand. Thank you.
raise your hand.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Tony?
I was just going to say, one of the areas that I focus on is in this area with animals. And, it's like, yeah, you can have a 6-acre enclosure for these elephants. That isn't what they need. The elephants, migrate over hundreds of miles. So, I mean, you're talking about 3 acres versus 6 acres. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument. The same thing with the gorillas. That is not an appropriate enclosure for gorillas. There are ones that are appropriate for animals like that have been used in research and at zoos, et cetera. And they're hundreds of acres, for these animals to live a more natural life. We know they can't be released back into their own wild habitats any longer, and it's sort of like with this argument that they're helping with the condors, et cetera. It's like SeaWorld's argument that they do rescue, marine mammals when they get stranded. Yes, they do that, but they also keep other ones in captivity and harm them, for entertainment purposes. So it's a form of gaslighting in a way. And, you want to think that, yes, SeaWorld is a private entity and the LA Zoo is a public one. To me, there's no difference in there. It's using animals for exploitation, and none of the enclosures are appropriate for those animals there. So there's nothing they can do to that zoo that's going to please people like myself and a lot of other people who think that this whole thing is a big mistake. And then to go in and take 16 acres of wild land on top of it is just adding insult to injury.
Well, it's completely ironic, right?
Ridiculous is what it is, completely.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've said enough about this. I think, where I stand on the zoo, and I think we should definitely be, voting, opposing this particular measure, because I know we can't go probably much further than that at this particular point, but we may have the opportunity later to do so, and I'd like to learn more about it. At one time, I'll admit, I was a member of the Zoo Association when my daughter was young, and we used to go there, et cetera, until I understood more about this as I matured. And so, and these ideas and thoughts, which I would encourage people to do. But I'd like to know a little bit more, like what is the point? Where are they getting this money? They never had any money to do anything. I mean, this is a tremendous amount of money. Is the city paying for this? I mean, is it related to the Olympics? It doesn't seem like it's anything to do with athletics. So I can understand how that would have a connection, unless it's just like we need one more amusement park here in Southern California kind of a thing. It seems preposterous, and from a lot of different perspectives.
Okay, I have Susan, then Melanie. So Susan?
I obviously am in line with everyone here. I think it's a horrendous idea. Yes, the zoo could probably use some improvements, but I don't understand why the city of Los Angeles, even with the Olympics coming, needs another, quote, entertainment venue. We have hundreds of entertainment venues, and I really don't quite understand what their purpose is other than to try to make more money. I know the zoo, I think I've heard in the past that the zoo needs more funding or something at one point, but this is not the way to gain that funding. In fact, if anything, I wish there was a campaign to let everyone know that is a zoo member what they plan to do, because I don't think most of the people that are zoo members probably have paid that much attention to what's going on. And maybe they withdraw their memberships because of this horrendous idea of taking away wild land just so a bunch of humans can do more stupid stuff, which seems to be what the way the world is these days. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Susan. Melanie?
Everybody has said some really great things. I think I have a couple points. One, I'm not sure that the comment period is going to be still open by the middle of next month. So I'm not sure if we've waited too long for this. Two, if we're going to do a motion, which I've been wanting us to do, then we as a committee need to be really clear and also, in conversation with board members, let folks know why we're doing this even ahead of time, make a good presentation, because last time it was chaos. Nobody had done the background research. Everybody was just nutty. So we're going to have to come in a lot cleaner if we do it. And one of the points that I made in the public hearings was, this goes directly against several city initiatives and motions and statements that are out there. And many of the actions they're taking are in a direct contradiction to city ordinances or city objectives and goals. And I recommended that they give a rethink to this, but they do it in concert with the city's biodiversity council, because the city has an expert biodiversity council that has been working on city's biodiversity initiatives, that has all the scientists. And to do something like this for a property like that in that area without hearing from the city's own biodiversity expert council is kind of crazy. And I've been putting that in front of several of the zoo folks when I've seen them at events and stuff too. But we need to do better. The city is much more inclined to invest in potentially revenue generating architectural city building, make us a world-class city kind of stuff without question, as opposed to the real issues the city is facing, both in terms of climate change and in terms of a lot of other social things that we're dealing with. They're much quicker to just rubber stamp city building, architecture, building stuff that, especially that can maybe either draw revenue. Even the 6th Street Bridge is a revenue generator, right? So it's a thing of resetting priorities and making real clear statements. That's why we're a neighborhood council, to weigh in on some of that stuff. So I hope we get to making a CIS, and I hope it's not too late. That's it.
Thank you, Melanie. Alexander?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the analogy to the aquarium of the Pacific expansion several years ago. I worked with them a little bit trying to get their folks, as millions of people go through there, to talk much more about, for instance, microfiber filtration that could be done upstream in laundry and other things during the tours there. And they were so, unfortunately, living in fear of bad news, the narrative at the aquarium. And they had this tremendous amount of money. They did make, they added on quite a bit, and they mainly focused more on entertainment and gifts from China and gift shops and art and all this stuff, but everything except the important stuff, which was the bad news. So it seems that we still have that same problem in this same similar situation with the zoo, is that they just have this fear that people will be less interested in hearing about bad news and getting educated and doing and getting action opportunities of ideas and education. So I hope that maybe the message we can send, as usual, is to not be afraid of the bad news and to get more of the education going, so that this is one of these situations where we, once again, have a large opportunity for one of the big places that people go in Los Angeles, and have an opportunity to educate them and not be afraid. But that's the difficult part in selling these places. Thank you.
So everyone has weighed in on the committee, I believe, and we all are not in support of this alternative 1.5. Your final comments by Diana and Chip, and then I'm going to call for a vote.
Yeah, I want to address just some things because I want to make sure that we're all working with accurate and take this as an opportunity. There were some things that were put out there. I just want to answer questions. So there's 3 or 4. Well, one is the EIR comment period, just so everyone knows, is closed. So what we're talking about is for the council file, right? Secondly, the 16.5 acres that they want to destroy is the first phase. So this is a long-term approach at the zoo. So the first thing they want to do is get in there and get rid of that 16.5 acres and convert it, because that's where they get to put the exhibits. And that's how they're going to get their money to do other parts of this big 20-year project. Secondly, so that's where the money is coming from. And then I think thirdly, they're not expanding any of the exhibits. The 16.5 acres are for new exhibits. So arguably, what's there now is really awful. I've not been to the zoo, but I hear from the people who have, and it sounds really sad. I'd like to see it fixed up too, but this portion, the California, what do they call it? The California space does not do anything for the existing exhibits. It's to put in new exhibits. So I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
Chip?
Yeah, I didn't realize you were going to make a vote. But what I was going to say is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just say that after review, we side with local experts like California Native Plants, Friends of Griffith Park, wherever you want to go to, and we don't like 1.5. So we don't, and then we could actually get that to the board for next Wednesday's meeting.
Okay. Can you write that? Okay, that's a fine motion. I just want to talk about something else. Let's go ahead and vote on that motion, and then I'll discuss something after.
Well, I would just like to comment. We've had problems before going to the board, and then the board says they don't have enough information. So I feel like we have to write a CIS or a motion that's going to go through here's why we object to this, because I feel like the board's going to want that.
So let me just say, the last time we went to the board, there was a lot of people who like zoos and don't have the same sort of position, don't hold the same position that we do. And I was fully unprepared for that. And so that's, I mean, so we do have to say something in the motion that is specifically why. Yeah.
We can just lift that from the other existing documents, right? Like Diane,
Yeah.
you really know the Audubon one and the CFDW one, right? And we have CNPSs out there. We could just, as long as we source it, that would be adequate and legit, correct?
I think that instead of writing it in a style that it looks like a comment letter, because the Audubon letter and the CNPS letter were both CNPS in particular was quite political, that we do it in the form of we object, we don't bury the headline, and then we do the whereas, and we pull maybe we pull the things out of the trustee agencies letter, which is the most significant information, and do the whereas, and I would like to throw in 30 by 30 as one of the whereases, which we're supposed to conserve 30%. This is an opportunity to conserve 16.5 acres. And so go down that, like council writes a motion. And so, yeah, we could
all
take,
vote you go girl for Diana. Let her do it. She's the expert.
yeah.
I have one that Adele did some edits on a few weeks ago. I don't know what happened to it, but I mean, I have a copy of it right here in my email. So Adele, I guess you decided not to move forward with that.
There a lot of things have been happening, so I did not want to say the beginning, you know, I wanted to restructure it. I wanted to have a discussion before. I didn't want to say the first part where it's like, you know, stroking them, like, we're so happy that you came up with this plan and listened to us. I don't want to say anything like that to them. I want to come out more strong that we oppose this plan. And after the discussion, I feel that's even more strongly that that's what we should do. So, and I didn't edit it enough to, you know, work to get it on. So I can send that. I think what I'd like to do is vote on the motion and then have vote on the concept of the motion and see, and we'll, you know, hopefully we'll pass that, and then we'll send the motion around and people can approve it.
Should the vote be Adele?
I can't hear you,
that-
Diana. Your thing's not on, but for some reason I can't hear you.
Should the vote be that we just vote that we are, take a vote that we're opposed to 1.5 and that we will write a CIS
Yes.
and bring it back? Or it can't the neighborhood council do an email vote if it's unanimous? The committee, I mean?
I don't know. I'll ask Scott. Let's vote on the motion, which Chip, you can restate it as best you can, and then.
Okay, so we're about to have a vote. The vote will be in favor of objecting to the existing 1.5.
Opposing, isn't it opposing? Opposing?
Yes. Thumbs up means you oppose the 1.5. Thumbs down means you approve the 1.5. So I shall also vote. Alexander and Susan,
I'm driving, so I've got to just, I'm opposed.
could you
Your
give me a
thumbs
thumbs
up.
Could you give me a
thumbs
thumbs up?
Do you need me to have
No, just
Sorry.
say thumbs up.
thumbs up from Alexander?
Got it.
Thank you.
And Susan,
Yep, she had one.
she had one. Oh, I didn't see it.
Okay, so it
And
is
Jesse, yeah, okay. Everyone, and
It is-
Melanie did.
unanimous.
Okay. All right, and so then what we'll do is Diana, Melanie, I, and maybe Chip will kind of draft something and and we can send it around when we get something.
Okay, right.
I mean, do you
And
want to, do you
you-
want to in on that, Tony? I don't know.
No, I'm fine with anything that opposes it, you know, and I think as much rationale as you can throw in there, that's great. They just, I mean, I know that our authority is limited. It's just making our voices heard.
Yeah.
Well, today's Monday and we have until Scott needs to do. Brandon, so you need to have it on the agenda for a vote for the full board next Wednesday by Friday.
I think Scott usually has the agenda ready by Saturday or Friday evening.
Okay, so if we could come up with something, Adele, between now and Friday that everyone wants, then we could actually put it on the agenda for next month, for
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
Because then we're in November and suddenly it's the first of the year.
Also, keep in mind, you didn't vote, you voted to create a motion, but you did not actually create, you vote on the motion itself, so it would have to be seconded at the board meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Seconded by a sustainability committee member, Brandon?
No, no, no. What it is that you guys approved to create a motion, but you did not actually vote on the particular motion, the wording. So when it goes to board, it would have to be seconded by a board member. I'll second it. I think it's a great idea, so
Okay.
it's no big deal. But because it wasn't seconded here, the actual language of the motion, the physical motion, the motion won't be completed until we first see it at the on the board meeting agenda. So it'll have to be seconded at the board meeting. But
Well, that was the question that we had. If we all voted unanimously, if we send it around, can we vote on email unanimously?
No,
Okay.
it has to be a public vote.
Okay. Okay. All right. My goal is to have this meeting done by 9 o'clock, and we have a discussion of artificial turf in Studio City. I don't have any motions yet on this anyway. I just wanted you to know that it's being banned all over the country. It was banned in Boston, it's banned in Millbrae. And also currently artificial turf is illegal in parkways, but it's still installed. And how can we support, I wrote this, a moratorium on installing turf fields and grass in our city. I don't think you can, in Millbrae, they did not ban it. What they did is they have a temporary ban, because in our city legislature, or state legislature, it says somewhere, and I'm sure Diana knows about this better than I do, but I can say that it says you cannot disallow anybody from planting any kind of drought tolerant plants or artificial grass. You can't say they can't do it because of the drought. And but what we know about artificial grass is it actually is not going to help the drought. And one of the biggest things that is going to happen is that when we do have a rain event, a big storm, the artificial turf is actually going to increase flooding, because what's going to happen is Earth can't absorb the water. And that is going to be a huge disaster, huge. And people with artificial turf are probably going to have flooding in their houses, in their first floor. Really, really bad. It's not, that's just one of the many horrible things about artificial turf that, and today, actually, I got in touch with this guy who's the head of the Sierra Club up in near Millbrae, and he sent me the letter that the Sierra Club is actually against artificial turf all over the state of California. And he sent me a great letter, which I will share with the committee, that he said we are free to use. The information about PFAS and other forever chemicals that are in the synthetic turf is new emerging information. The EPA is starting to ban these PFAS, PFOS, and it is really, it's new science that's happening about artificial turf. And I like to think of it as what happened with the tobacco industry, where they knew that cigarettes were causing cancer and they denied it for years, until Jeffrey Wigand, if you remember him, was a whistleblower within the industry, and he revealed that the cigarette companies knew that it was causing cancer, and that they were and they still are marketing it to children, terrible things. So it's sort of you know, the corporate, the way that corporations work. And interesting note, Field Turf Company, which is the company that is supplying all the schools, is supplying Harvard Westlake and Campbell Hall and Notre Dame with these fields.
Yep.
It
They weren't there.
is a
What do you need? They're
Field Turf is was started by Monsanto. And if you know what Monsanto did, they created Agent Orange and Roundup. And are you going to believe a company like Field Turf? They are saying we don't have any PFAS in our plastic fields, but they can't make it without PFAS, and they can't do it because it's a whole thing about in the blades when they make it, and it comes out on PFAS attaches to the blades and to the backing. And as the fields break down, it goes into the water, it goes into the children, it goes into the air. And it's something we need to stop, both on private property in terms of installing artificial grass, you know, and in terms of fields and children. I see you have your hand raised, Diana, if you would like to begin the discussion.
Well, I think it's important to realize that we have two state laws that are an impediment to what we'd probably all like to see, which is not have plastic grass. I've lost clients over this issue, so it's near and dear to my heart. But it is not. The city did try to ban plastic grass in the parkways, but they can't. The state law prevents them from that. There's two state laws, AB, and I can't remember the numbers right now. One was targeting HOAs and the other one targeted everything else in residential areas. What we worked on a few years ago was making sure you didn't get the DWP turf rebate if you used plastic grass and lots of gravel. So that was the best we could do for the folks who worked on this issue. In the parkways, the only thing that you could work on from the city's perspective is that the city can require that anybody putting plastic grass in the parkways at least provides a tree well so that it doesn't kill the trees that have been planted in the parkways. And what we've seen a lot of is the plastic grass going right over the root flare, right up to the trunk of the tree, and it will kill the tree at some point. So all these planting programs, and then the adjacent property owner decides he's going to then put plastic grass there, and there you go. So that's something, but there's I don't know of any council file for this. The rest of it is what I do all day long, which is try and get people to put native plants in their yards and, you know, swales and things like that. But I don't know what we can do because of the state law, and the city can't override a state law.
Melanie?
Yeah, this is a state law, and the only thing you can do is ask somebody at the state to make a new one on that. And with respect to the city, you don't get some of that tasty $5 a square foot rebate if you install artificial turf, right? Yes, it's still in parkways, and that is on the long list. The RPLG is something that is long overdue to be reformed. But you can't get any money for it, and that's about the best we can do right now, besides an educational campaign with your friends and neighbors. That's pretty much it. Sad to say, and it sucks, unless talking to the media never hurts. crafting a good story, getting someone to do something. That's super helpful, but this neighborhood council, there's really nothing for us to do right now on that, on private properties. Unfortunately, we can absolutely push back against it on developments that are proposed in this community, but there's nothing else we can do. So.
Chip?
Yeah, this committee, Alex has done tremendous work on investigating artificial turf. So he's got a ton of material, a ton of research. My thinking was that we're probably going to each of us individually come up against artificial turf, and we'll probably come up with a CIS or whatever. I think it makes sense to take Alex's documentation, share that with all the other neighborhood councils, and also let the other neighborhood councils know that we're stymied by a law, which stinks, it smells funny. We're going to ask to have that state law changed. At the Studio City Residents Association a couple of weeks ago, with a fair amount of baiting, Laura Friedman, who is running for state rep in the area in the newly drawn districts, went off pretty eloquently on her resistance to artificial turf. Her husband is a landscape architect, so she's pretty familiar with the material, with the topic, and she would be an obvious person to go to initially. This is what we found in reference to some developments going on within Studio City. We found out we can't forbid it within Studio City. You had mentioned your opposition to artificial turf. Here's a bunch of research, go run with it. And then she could reach out across to the other house and see if she can get somebody on the Senate side. But I think we have to start moving forward. I agree that I was stunned to see that email exchange going around, that there really would be a law that would prevent us from prohibiting a property which is fairly obviously cancerous.
Mm.
I mean, it's pretty bizarre. So I think we have to start asking to have the law done. Alex has already done all the work. Let's just take his work and amplify the impact of that by spreading it to legislatures and also to the other neighborhood councils. So I propose that I'll sit with Alexander between now and next month, and we'll come back with a motion that we would send to the neighborhood council at Studio City, which we could also share. Isn't there a cross neighborhood council sustainability
Yes,
cabal?
yes.
So we can go through it that way. So I think that's probably the best way to go. So I'll work with Alex on it, and you guys could all see it coming. Anybody else that has expertise, we will come to you for your approval of what Alex and I put together. You okay with that, Alex?
Yeah, I just wanted to, sorry, I couldn't hear for a little while because I was out of service. I just want to mention to everybody two things. One is, I believe everybody needs to understand something. The law that started this whole idea that you can't ban it started in 2014 or 17, one of the big droughts. And the state legislature said, we're not going to allow people to ban it because it's that back then they thought a good idea to handle drought and give people that. Of course, now you can't get money when you put it in if you take out your turf. But the big game changing moment, everybody needs to understand this. The big moment right now is going to be the EPA's change in how the testing occurs at the level at which a given salesperson at a given company's field turf, all the big players, even the small ones, they all believe they don't have PFAS because they can run a test that shows no PFAS. That is a test that is outdated. The EPA is about to push hard now to focus on the tests that can be done, costs money, not a lot, but you can do it, and it gets it done and shows the PFAS. And so these companies can lie legally at the moment, but they won't be able to hide much longer. And then that is the moment when folks will start to be able to get educated, hopefully by people, anybody, and it won't sound like it's an activist speaking. I really want Adele to touch base on the idea of a town meeting here in Studio City, not about Weddington, but about artificial turf. And and native plantings, and have Diana there, and every ounce of the energy focus on getting the native plant discussion out there right alongside all the education. And I expect in just the next couple of weeks, a lot more information about artificial turf, so that we can very legitimately point the finger at the very big companies out there that are pushing all their sales forces hard to make as much money as they can, because they know it's not going to be much longer. The tide is turning. Everybody can just keep an eye on Google, on the bans. They're happening. Millbrae is going to go from temporary to permanent, and it's going to start to spread like wildfire from Burbank to Boston. But we just have to keep trying, and most of all, educate. And I wouldn't push this towards the Weddington side of things, so that we can make a town meeting sound very much more like really an educational program and for opportunity, rather than a bunch of activists sounding off. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, not as the chair of the sustainability, but as a advocate against artificial turf, Alexander and I have been working on getting a town hall, sort of more of a symposium really than town hall, over at the church across from Weddington, at that, what's that? I can't remember. Anyway, they are willing to give us the space, and we were going to get we're working on getting the experts to come and talk about it. And we wanted also to have some people talk about planting native plants, as a way of dealing with drought, not just telling them what they can't do, but telling them what they can do. Yeah, we're working on that. Do we have a date, Alexander?
Yeah, the 29th, after 5
of October
p.m.
is really
October
soon.
29th.
It's really soon.
I know, it's very soon. And she's pretty booked up after that. But they're willing to do this. They can handle up to 200 people. They can possibly not charge us if they see this as a benefit to the community and not a sound off on Weddington, so that it's there for really as a glass half full. We show people what to do, and just show clear evidence that our artificial turf just is so stupid and terrible. So yeah, I mean and we can try for another date, since that's going to rush up on us, and we're going to barely be ready to get the word out, and how we're going to get the word out, and what is the word, the messaging. So that's the reality of it.
Yep.
So can I just comment on that?
Yeah.
Just a suggestion, because I've worked in the pesticide space, fighting and suing the state of California over pesticides. Surprisingly, toxic stuff doesn't seem to bother people so much. Better living through chemistry, I guess. We're still there. So it's not the most compelling, but I believe we should be talking about is nature is the solution. If I put a native garden in a drought tolerant native garden in your landscape, you're going to save water. You don't need to put plastic there. And then it's going to do all of these other things. And that is what 30 by 30s, it is nature's solution. So I think that's the approach from my perspective, so that you can have, and plastic grass is nowhere near nature. Right. So if you don't want to just make this about plastic grass, that's just one part of it.
Right.
Solving the
Chris?
drought with nature, solving climate with nature, you can go down the list.
I think it's really important too, because people do see the financial benefits of if they still can get a rebate or whatever for putting in the artificial turf or whatever. If it can be made clear that is not supposed to happen and will not happen in the future or whatever, I think that's probably really important too, because I know of several people who did it specifically because they were going to get a rebate, and they all got the rebate even though they weren't supposed to. So that word has gotten around, and a lot of people don't even know they weren't supposed to get it. So I think if the financial incentive isn't there, that's probably a huge bit of important information to have in there.
I literally took a call, and this happens a couple of times a week, but I took a call this morning from some random person who called asking how they can get the rebate for artificial turf. And I have to walk them through the whole thing. But it was a lot of work to get that removed from the incentive after the last turf debacle. So it's just, just have to keep letting people know and educating them on the alternative.
Tony?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mentioned this before, having put in 2 artificial stadiums in Oak Park, when I was superintendent there. And they're real expensive, and I mean, they're $1 million for a regular, that's what $1 million of what a football field costs to put in. And then it only lasts 8 to 10 years, and then you have to put another $1 million in to redo it. And it's expensive, but I just don't know of a lot of examples of schools that have stadiums with natural turf. And I think that might be something to look for, of a school that's stayed with natural turf and is proud that they did that. I would have liked to have done that, but honestly, the pressure from the athletic groups, you have no idea what it's like. It's not just the athletic teams at the schools, which are, by the way, extremely powerful, the parents and everybody else involved, but it's club soccer organizations, club this, club that. They all use those fields, and they pay big money. They have unlimited money. When we put the first field in, the $1 million, it was the soccer organization, I'm trying to think of the name of it at the moment, Real SoCal, wrote a check for $1 million to the school district to put it in. Cash. They had it. They said, "Oh, we could put in 2 or 3 of these." They have an unbelievable amount of money, and they're looking for, and they don't have enough space for their kids to play soccer. And so there's a sub problem here. Part of it is that the city of Los Angeles does a very, 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 very poor job at providing locations for people to play club sports. So they go to the schools, and then the schools have too much use on them, so it drives them into this. And then all they have to do is turn on the TV on Sunday, and they see the SoFi Stadium. And the SoFi Stadium's turf is the same company, Hellas Turf, that put in this turf at Oak Park. And everybody wants to play on that same turf that the Chargers are playing on. So you've got something. You talk about the tobacco companies. I mean, there's a lot of money on that side. And so it may be worth bifurcating this a little bit to do I want to put artificial turf in my house, which is a different type probably than in a stadium at a school. I don't know. But, a lot of people on that one, unless you can find, for example, schools that have natural turf fields.
There are, and we have a gentleman from San Diego who's putting in a lot of normal turf that can now be watered, even, believe it or not, with salt water. There's a lot of work in the fescue and grass world to do exactly that, to give schools the alternative.
So that would be,
and it's happening.
Yeah,
it's happening. Yeah,
because it hasn't been around. We weren't familiar with it, and I don't know anything around here. And I was thinking maybe the Bay Area.
San Diego is very active in this space and doing it because I don't know if you've heard, but San Diego's also has their shit together regarding water and water projects that have given them a much better outlook. But most of all, these schools that will now be ripping, I've got 2 schools that are potentially going to be ripping out their artificial turf and hiring this gentleman. So I'm trying to bring all these pieces of the puzzle together. There's a lot of talk in this space, though, about making it a priority, and that may happen in the California Unified School Districts after the heat island problem that happened when schools began this fall, and these monster heat waves that hit, and kids had nothing but heat. And the schools now have realized, and the amount of money that's going to be pouring in to create green space in the Unified School Districts is going to happen, because they cannot. They know this cannot keep happening where you've got.
I believe there were 11 kids died of heat stroke.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
so there's been deaths, and there's also the NFL, the players are petitioning.
SoFi has a lawsuit. I mean, I'll get hands on it, but so there's a lot of talk at SoFi to go grass. The NFL has a lawsuit going on. They've got
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of happening in this. It's kind of ongoing, fluid. I'll bring it up, especially as we get to this. If we can get to a town meeting, we've got talking heads that can be on screen from fantastic groups that will tell people about the alternatives, even for the commercial and school. The big moment right now is Campbell Hall is about to try to redo theirs with crazy field turf. And we're trying to get this study out that will prove field turf knows it or knew it. And most of all, it can be proven now that field turf is full of shit, and they are absolutely lying through their teeth, but they're doing it conveniently, hiding behind a current test instead of the new test that shows they're lying through their teeth. And this goes right across the board for every company that makes that artificial turf in Georgia. The big ones of them all are pounding it into both commercial large stadiums and these schools. And we'll get this to those parents that are scared shitless to talk at Harvard Westlake, but eventually we're going to get this truth out there. It's just a matter of time.
Well, maybe they would like to be an innovator with like you say, one of these.
Oh, they should. They should.
I mean,
They
that's what
should.
we need to see. I would have done it in our district had I known about it or was presented with it, but that was not something that was really around. And even I was
the knowledge about PFAS was just discovered in 2019. It's not,
folks. We're running tests
new.
right now that are going to
Yeah.
prove that we're running 3 tests. I've raised $70,000 through a foundation, and we're running tests. I don't know how fast we can get this done, but we're going to show this is long before the water has carried that PFAS off of the turf. This is microdust, microdermal, and right through the skin, through the mouth, and through the nose. This goes beyond the girls that have passed away, the kids that have died from cancer, the goalkeepers in the Northwest, who have unprovable but very likely gotten cancer from that crumb rubber. But this isn't even about the crumb rubber, folks. This is about the blades and the backing. This is about the PFAS that's in there, and we're all playing games with these companies. So just stay tuned.
Just first of all, I just don't want to forget that this is all part of toxic yards in general, whether it's fertilizer, herbicides like Roundup, pesticides, right? Big oil is in our yards, and this is just another one of those. So I just don't want us to forget that this is just one piece of a larger issue connected to sustainability and how we plant things in our landscapes. And so it's just one piece. It's all very toxic if you have a conventional landscape, whether it's plastic grass or exotic grass or exotic plants.
Okay, so is there any further discussion? We're at my time limit for the meeting. I don't want to stress us out. I do want a couple of announcements. Number one, do we want to have a meeting in December? I know that's next month is November, but Scott was asking me, do we want to have a meeting in December? And I think we could have like a short 1-hour meeting and maybe we could even have it in person and have a little eggnog or something. I don't know, non-alcoholic. So think about that and let me know. Wednesday is the land use meeting this week. I don't know if you want to go there or attend or whatever. I'm just letting you know. And then the following Wednesday, the 19th, is the board meeting. And against my better judgment, I am running for the open seat on the board. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I would like it if you all would show up and support me if you felt like supporting me. And if you feel like not supporting me, please show up and don't support me. I don't I really don't, yeah, it would be nice. And yeah.
If you're not going to support Adele, don't show up.
If you're gonna support me, don't show up. No.
If you're going to support her, show up.
Right.
On the 20th for those people.
Is it the 20th? I thought
No.
it was the. Okay, boo. Okay. No, because I got the date for this wrong when I first wrote it down for some reason. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Is there, unless there's something else someone would like to say?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I.
Aye. Thank you, guys. Thank you for a great meeting and lots of interesting,
Elle.
smart discussion. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything. I
Thank you.
appreciate.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Good night.